And tell the person next to you, yeah, or behind you, it's good to see you here. It's very good to see you here. Yeah, and when the person is in front of you, you say, okay, very good. Yeah. I came all the way from Peru, it's a country in the south, yeah, of the Americas. Yeah, because we belong to the Americas. Canada belongs to the Americas. North America too, and all the way down to Argentina. And I come from Peru. The music you hear is typical music of Peru. Yeah, they use a lot of the pan flute, and it's coming from the Andes. Yeah, and I'm here to tell you something about the country of Peru. Yeah, and maybe, who of you have heard of that country? Oh, yeah, everybody? Okay, that's great. Yeah, and my friend who works for the tourist office, yeah, in Peru, she would love to hear that, because that means that she did a good job. Yeah? Okay, there is ancient Peru. Hold on. Ancient Peru, you see here some a mask. This is from the Chavin culture. The Chavin culture was one of the first cultures in Peru. Yeah, there below you see a wall, and they make tunnels in walls. They make temples in the walls. Yeah, this is very important. Later on, I will come back on Chavin. So, remember the tunnels, which is very important. Here you see another one, which is in Caral, which is actually the biggest city and the most most ancient city in the Americas, more than 5,000 years ago.
I've been there 15 times.
Jonah has been there for 15 times. Yeah, Caral, 5,000 years. Yeah, it's the oldest city known in Peru, and is in the northern part of Lima. And this is the Chavin culture in Ancash, which is in the northern part of Lima too. Here you see a man which is from the Paracas culture. It's in the south. And you see that he has a big head. You know how they did that? When the babies were born, they wrapped their head. So instead of growing this way, it grew up and small, you know? And they did that with the nobleman. Yeah? And this is in south of Lima. You see a temple here, and at the right side you see the lines of Nazca. The Nazca lines, which are very, very famous. They are figures made in the desert, which were seen from a very high distance and long distance. And actually, people thought these were made by aliens. They didn't know exactly what it was until a short time ago. They found out that these are maps of water channels under the ground.
How did they make them?
They make them with stones, and they make the figures on the stones. They're more or less 2.5, 3 centimeters high, the stones, and there are monkeys, there are birds, they have special, typical Peruvian, they have typical Peruvian birds, animals. This is the condor. Here you have, let me check. Yeah, this is the condor. Here you have a monkey, which is very special too. And nowadays you can fly over and you can see all the Nazca lines.
You can see them from space, huh?
Yeah, they can see them from space. So when you, Pastor John, why don't you look it up one day you put a space photo, because I think they exist. Space photo, and you can see it. You can look it up also in YouTube or in Google. You can Google it. This is one of the most famous parts of Peru. This is the Machu culture, the Lord of Zipan. This is the oldest grave and most complete grave they have found. This was Lord of Sipan was a nobleman, a king, and he was actually found with all the gold in here. It was complete. And when you go there, here, this is his mausoleum. You can see him actually, the mummy, with all the golden plates. And here you have another mummy, and this is the burial site. They used to be buried with all the things they had, and even with all their servants. Oh, yes. Yeah, okay. And you see here, now this is the Wari culture. It's a temple. They used to sacrifice people. That's what they did. Ancient cultures did that all over the world. All right, and I was there, and I was asking one of the guides. I said, "It's an anecdote," and I asked him, "What do you think about sacrificing?" And he said, "The earth, Mother Earth, is still angry. We need to sacrifice virgins." That is what he said. Culture is still living. They don't do it because it's prohibited, and they don't do it, but people think. This is in Puno, in the southeast part. Is the highest town of Peru. Later on we will see something else. This is the Tiwanaku culture. They had huge buildings and huge temples. And here we have the Chimu culture temple complex in Chanchan in Trujillo. It's a northern province of Peru. And you see the buildings here, actually houses, and this is a temple complex. There's more or less 2,200 buildings. It's enormous. Can you play the video, please? This is, now we're coming to the Inca Empire, the Incas. The legend goes that the Incas came out of the Titicaca Lake. That is what the legend tells us. And he put his scepter and he conquered the land. The next video, please. You will see something about the Incan Empire.
The Inca built an empire that, if placed over the old world, would stretch from St. Petersburg to Cairo. They transformed a hostile landscape into an agricultural marvel and developed a culture with such respect for the dead that corpses were engaging in politics decades after life had left them. In this video, we will look at how the Inca adapted to their environment and became what British historian Felipe Fernandez Armesto called the most impressive empire builders of their day. Most of the Inca heartland is 3,000 meters above sea level and has low rainfall, low temperatures, and thin soils. It can drop below freezing every single month at this altitude. There is nowhere else on Earth, said anthropologist John Murrah, where millions insist against all apparent logic on living at 10,000 or even 14,000 feet above sea level. Nowhere else have people lived for so many thousands of years in such visibly vulnerable circumstances. The one advantage to this environment, though, was the enormous ecological variety. Due to the massive fluctuations in altitude, you can encounter more than 20 different life zones within a few hundred kilometers. The Inca used this to their advantage. A diverse range of crops was planted in different ecological zones and at different altitudes to ensure against famines caused by climatic changes or diseases, as not all zones would be affected similarly. Any surplus food was stored in warehouses controlled by the state for insurance against famine and drought. and a kind of freeze-dried potato was developed called chino to preserve potatoes in these warehouses for longer periods. As llamas cannot pull a plough very well, all ploughing and farming was done by hand. Ancient Andean cultures soon realized that a large group could plough a field much faster than a single farmer. This soon developed into a complex system of reciprocity and cooperation, which became a pivotal trait to nearly all Andean cultures. In times of famine, supplies would be redistributed to those in need. Widows, the sick, and people too old for work were taken care of and had their lands worked for them. With such an extreme environment, the Inca had to develop these kinds of safeguards to ensure society ran smoothly. Total cooperation from all members of society was necessary, a trait which led to one of the strangest parts of Inca society, the complete lack of markets. It is hard for us to imagine, but the Inca civilization functioned nearly entirely without money. The production, storage, and distribution of goods were wholly controlled by the central Inca government. Each citizen received and contributed food, tools, and clothing to and from state-owned warehouses and needed to purchase nothing. Taxes were not collected in money, since there was none, and neither were they collected in other valuables. Instead, taxes were collected in the form of human labor, in a system called mita. Through the use of mita, the central government could move workers across the empire and focus them on what the highest priority tasks were. Mining, sowing, and construction are just a few of the tasks that were carried out by mita workers. This is how the Inca were able to complete massive projects in their short 100-year reign. A primary trait of Andean civilizations is their relationship with llamas and alpacas, the only large domesticable animal in the region. Llamas and alpacas were essential to Inca society. They could not only help by carrying goods, but also by providing meat and, most importantly, cloth. This cloth was everything to the Inca. It kept the state functioning. It clothed the people, it functioned as a marker of rank, and well-made cloth was regularly gifted to people that pleased the emperor. Cloth was so tightly regulated that the government even issued people their outfits. Each province of the Inca Empire was given some of these state-owned herds and had to produce a certain amount of cloth each year that would be stored in these state-owned warehouses. The Inca warehouses, called cucas, were built along the Inca highway system, one every 22 kilometers or so. An immense variety of goods were stored there, and they could be distributed whenever needed. The storehouses were a response to the challenges of the Andean environment. The lack of navigable rivers, wheeled vehicles, or large draft animals meant that goods couldn't be transported long distances easily. So these warehouses were constructed within walkable distances. They also allowed armies to march across the realm without weapons and equipment slowing them down, as they could equip themselves at the warehouse closest to their destination. One of the most essential elements in the success of the Inca Empire was the remarkable system of highways, extending for at least 40,000 kilometers. These highways had to pass over mountains, and frightening suspension bridges were common. Relay stations called tambos dotted the highway, stationed by runners or casquis. These were the fastest men from the nearby town who would run from one tambo to another with gifts, quipu, or messages. This system allowed the Incas to send information across 392 kilometers in a day. The Roman Empire, even with mounted messengers, could rarely get a message over 320 kilometers away in a day. Along with these huge highway projects, the Inca cut through mountainsides, building cisterns, terraces, and irrigation canals to increase agricultural productivity. At the empire's peak in the 16th century, over 1 million hectares of terraces were in use. A terrace was constructed by building a retaining wall and then laying gravel, then sand, and then soil on top of each other, forming a step. This captured water that would otherwise rush down the hillside and prevented flooding by filtering the water slowly. It also provided a way to stop crops from freezing, as these stones would absorb heat from the sun and retain it through the cold and day and nights. In an environment where only 2% of the land is suitable for agriculture, the Inca transformed their heartland into an agricultural powerhouse. Finally, there's the magnificent Inca stonework. The Inca used perfectly fitted stones that could stick together without the use of mortar. They fit stones together like enormous jigsaw pieces. They were so well fitted, a pin could not pass through most of the joints. Major Inca constructions have also been found to be earthquake-proof. These rocks were quarried, shaped and moved using mostly stone tools and rope. That is the physical Inca realm, but what was their spiritual realm made up of? The Inca believed wholeheartedly in the idea that the spirit realm and ours were linked, and that the dead could influence events in our world. One of the most unusual manifestations of this belief was Inca mummification. These malki, as the Inca called them, were not the typical way to spend your afterlife. Only members of influential families were regularly mummified, and the corpse was treated as if it were living. They were fed, dressed, and cared for as if nothing was different. In return, the dead would protect their families, maintain fertile land, and ensure a steady supply of water. They were consulted in all critical life matters and asked about how to proceed during troubling times. The mummies of Inca rulers received an unimaginable level of care and respect. They lived an afterlife enviable to the living. Dead Inca rulers were meticulously preserved, so much so that the Spanish discovered people worshipping them long after the empire had fallen. Even in death, Inca nobles still maintained control of all their wealth, land, and estates. What is odd to us made perfect sense to the Inca, as mummies were seen as living creatures. This strange belief contributed to both the rise and fall of the Inca. As the wealth of a dead emperor was not passed on to his successor, it was instead managed by their panica, which was a kind of royal family group tasked with preserving mummies. So new emperors could not use the wealth of their predecessor, and new conquests and constructions had to commence immediately to secure wealth and power. As all the good land around Cusco fell under the control of dead rulers and their strange mummy corporations, emperors had to spend significant amounts of time and effort on campaigns far away from the empire's center. This expanded the empire quickly, but allowed little time for consolidation. Competing panicas vied for power so intensely and ruthlessly that Machiavelli himself would blush and Medici would take notes. When the Spanish arrived, they would use these competing families against one another to weaken the empire. Despite all their monumental buildings and works, and despite the kind of guaranteed welfare that the Inca state provided, they were still plagued with revolts. Their empire didn't have a lot of time to consolidate their rule. When the Spanish arrived, the empire was barely 100 years old. Loyalties from conquered ethnic groups were fickle, and emperors had to deal with many bloody revolutions during their reigns. No Inca emperor dealt with more of these than Huayna Capac, who spent most of his reign pacifying newly conquered territory. However, he isn't remembered today as being the revolt-smashing emperor. No, he's remembered as the first Inca emperor to die of smallpox, and his death kicked off a massive Inca civil war just as the Spanish first arrived.
Okay, you have seen something about the rise of the Inca Empire. Wasn't that impressive? Yes. Yeah. In Peru, the people, they are looking back with a lot of pride to their history, to their ancient ancestors. Yeah, but there are things they don't remember. For example, the panicas. You know, when that the mummies are still alive. That's what many people don't know. Yeah, but deep inside the Andes, they still do that. They still have them. Yeah, and they still want them to rule their lives. That's what he said. noblemen are still alive. Yeah, but the empire came down with the arrival of the conquistadores, the Spanish. Yeah, this is Francisco Pizarro. He went to Peru. We have Cortés, who went to Mexico. Yeah, but in 1541, he conquered with 180 men the Incan army of several thousand men. Just with 180 because they had guns. And that is what the Inca didn't have. Yeah, and the battle took less than 15 minutes. In 15 minutes this was over. Remember, you are here already 20 minutes or 30 minutes. The battle was, he came and finished, just finished. Then Peru became, ruled by a viceroy, Francisco de Toledo. Spain was a kingdom. And the Spanish king sent Francisco de Toledo to Peru to manage it as a province. And the fact is that he wanted to tackle the Incan rule. He wanted to give rights to the First Nation people there. He said, I want them to live under Spanish rule, but I also want them to have Spanish law for them and the benefits of being a Spanish citizen. But what he did was killing Tupac Amaru, the last emperor. He had to break the power of the rulers of the Incas in order to do that. And this man, this king, this emperor, was known for the fact that he wasn't really intelligent, but he was beautiful. No, that is what they say. Yeah? And he was just like the Chinese emperors, he was raised in a city far away from the people. And when Francisco de Toledo catched him, arrested him, he let him walk through the streets of Cusco. And even the Spanish people who were living in the city didn't want him to be killed because he was so beautiful. Everybody was in his favor. That's what the legend said. That's what the history said. The legend says. Yeah, but he did it. And when he went back to Spain, the Spanish king fired him because he said, "You promised me to bring me a king, and you killed him." He killed the king, and that is what the Spanish king didn't accept. They accepted that a king was submitted, but he was a king, and he shouldn't be killed. So you see here that Tupac Amaru died in 1572. After the Incan Empire fell down and the Spanish came, we have known more about the First Nation people in Peru. You see here different people. Here you have the Aymara culture, or Aymara people. They live in Puno, in the altiplane, and there are more or less 440,000 of them. You see the little round heads here? Okay, the women are known for these hats. When a Peruvian woman wears this hat, you know that she's from Aymara descendants, or member of the Aymara nation. The men that wear these hats too. This is when they celebrate religious feasts, and they dress up, and those dresses can cost more or less $3,000 to $4,000, even $10,000. And they are known to be rich, but they don't live in big houses as we do, but they have money. They are known for being tradesmen, businessmen. Yeah, they are more or less responsible for the textile industry in Peru. In Lima, Pastor John knows, in Lima there is a place called Gamara. There are more or less than 350,000 small entrepreneurs working in the textile business. The majority of them come from this nation. Yeah, kids, people, they have businesses, huge businesses. Here we see the Quechua, rest of Peru. And by the way, the Incas, they belong to this nation, the Aymara nation. They come from Bolivia. In the altiplane, you see a lot of them. We have also Quechua. They live in the rest of Peru. There are more or less 3 million. They were conquered by the Incas. They speak a language which is totally different than this one. This is called Aymara and this is Quechua, and there are many, 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 many dialects of Quechua. You see here, you see elders of a Quechua tribe, and here you see a girl, a woman with her child. And do you see the garments here?
Yeah.
Aren't they look alike? That's what draws me the attention. I got a shawl from the First Nations here when I got married in 2016, and I said, "Hey, it looks the same, only other colors." Here you have people from the jungle, the Amazon jungle. These are Shipibo Conibo. They are very funny people. They are funny, very happy people. They have a lot of music. You will hear it later. Yeah, and I have a friend he comes from this nation, and they're always laughing. When you see them, they're always laughing. And actually, their music is very good. The girls, they have very high-pitched voices, and it's very beautiful. Here you have the Ashaninkas. They live in the central part of the Amazon. They're different. You see their clothing is different. Yeah, and they're very nice people, but they're very closed. They're very isolated. They have lived difficult parts in their history, and they don't want to have much contact with the colonists or with the government. Among them, there are Christians though, and I've lived there for 2 years with them in their areas, in their villages, and it was very nice to be there, but they're very isolated. They don't want to have contact with you so much. Here you see some other people from the jungle. These are the Amaisha, the Yanasha. They're warriors. Here you see the Mascopiro. They're also warriors, and they live deep inside the jungle, and they are fearful, the Mascopiro. The other nations, the other tribes, they fear them because they are they are dangerous warriors. And in Peru, there are 55 different ethnic nations like them. 55. And these are the Shuar people, different tribes too, Shuar people. And these one live deep inside the jungle. These one not, and these one live near close by the rivers. And there is also German-Austrian presence in Peru. Yeah, and they belong to Peru. They identify with Peru. And Peru identifies with them. This is very strange. But it is something special. And they live here in this part of Peru. This is all Peru here. They live in this part. They live in the cities of Posuso and Oxapampa. And you can see that they, on special days, they walk in lederhosen. They do. And they have German, Austrian music. They arrived there in the late 1800s. They arrived there. And you see the buildings, they're just the same as in Germany and Austria.
What would have brought them to Peru?
They just left. Many came from Prussia too, and just left. There is a place which is called Prussia. Yeah, and they left, and they were looking for better economy, better things, and they went to South America, and they end up
Germans,
here.
Germans, they love native cultures.
Yeah, and they end up here. And They are very prosperous. They have big farms. They have cattle. They have they have cattle. They have wood, and the local people work with them, and they sometimes mix. Yeah, and they work in cowboy hats. They work in boots.
It's almost like the Hutterites living here.
Yeah. But there was also a period of violence in Peru, and when we talk about Peru, we have to talk about that. I will not talk about it in details, but we have to talk about it because it's part of Peru's history, and it marks a before and an after of Peru. The period of violence started in the 1970s with these ones. 1970, yeah. It started actually here in this part. This is called Ayacucho. And there was a lot of violence, yeah, and when you see here, this part of Peru in the late 80s, early 90s was under the influence of Maoist Marxist forces. Here you see that almost 80% of the territory and of the cities was under their rule. They were influenced. A lot of people were with them, and it was terrible. The war led to 70,000 dead people and even more missing. 40,000 orphans, 20,000 widows. More than 1 million got displaced from the land. That's why Lima is so full of people.
Complete tribes were killed.
Yeah, complete tribes were killed, and also when we saw the First Nations in the First Nations in the mountains and in the Amazon, they were wiped out by the terrorists. They were wiped out.
And I don't remember any of that, or maybe just didn't pay attention to it. Was it covered by the world news, or?
That's the thing. Many people fled Peru for the violence, but many of them were members of these forces. They were political refugees, and I'm not talking about I'm against them or for them, but it was not covered by the news. And Peru was accused of government violence. Yeah, and it was, the world stage said that Peru was to blame. I've been there, and I was there at the last, in this.
You were there.
I was here in 1998. In 1996 I was there already, but in 1998 I went back, and I remember that the first thing I saw was a bomb attack. A bomb attack.
A bomb.
A bomb attack. Yeah, so, and it wasn't done by the government. It wasn't done by the government, so.
Other countries were involved?
No, there was a Maoist Marxist violence. People who, who adapted these philosophy, and they stood up. And actually, I think that the Cold War was, that is my opinion, but the Cold War was fought here in Peru. Yeah, because it came up, and it was huge. And a friend of mine who was part of the Truth Commission, he was a financial manager, and they took up a lot of testimonies from both sides. And every Sunday he came to church and he was weeping because the stories are terrible. They are so terrible. But it's just, to introduce you a little bit to this period.
They would go into villages. The rebels would go into villages and kill all the men.
Yeah, all the men.
And leave the women and take the women either as slaves or, or as helpers.
Although we killed too the women, there are stories known of that. A man who I know who told us that his daughter was being thrown in a baking oven, alive, when she was burned. That kind of things.
I met with the Association of Widows, and they had around 60 in the city of Manchai, an association of widows, and all their men were assassinated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here you see, for example, this is a woman, she's, I don't remember her first name, but her last name is Moyano. And she stood up for the people in Lima. She stood up and she was killed by dynamite. Yeah, and she's people remember her. And people remember her because of what she did. This is a car bombing in Miraflores. It's called Tarata.
Why was this uprising? Why did they do, was it for control?
They wanted to have another political system.
Okay.
Yeah, and something like, I don't know if you heard something about Cambodia or Myanmar, or in Asia, you have the where communist regimes, they wanted to put this here. So that bad was it. Here you see another car bomb, here you see victims walking with the bodies of their loved ones. Women. But the government started to arm local people, this is called ronderos, and they were, they were fighting against the terrorists, and finally they were broken. And these men, they have fought a lot, and these men, have given their lives for their families and for the nation. And it's very important. The violence ended with the hijacking of the Japanese embassy. I don't know if you heard of it. Yeah. 300 hostages, plus hostages, were taken in the Japanese embassy. And the president's mother, Fujimori, was there, and they didn't know. The ones who took the embassy, they didn't know. Otherwise, it would have been worse. She could escape. The hijacking took 4 months. It lasted for 4 months, 4 long months. And Christmas, when we are with the family, and you are with the family, these people weren't home. They were here.
What year was that?
I think it was in the 2000s, more or less.
Not long. No.
I went to a reenactment of the hostage taking at the embassy. They have rebuilt an embassy elsewhere, and you would sit there, and then they would reenact the whole hostage taking. So when I was there, I thought I was in the middle of a war. They were blowing doors out and windows out.
It was really, I was living 5 blocks away from here when it happened, actually. 5 blocks away from here, so we heard a big bang and we knew it was wrong. This is the President Fujimori. He decided to take the embassy, and he was under a lot of pressure. And there is a special commando unit which was specially trained, and they called Chavin Dewanta. Remember the Chavin culture I spoke about? The first one? Yeah. They decided to make tunnels. The military took they had the knowledge of how the tunnels had to be made according to ancient habits, to the Chavin culture. And they hired 30 or 40 miners, and during the months, they were constructing these tunnels. And they took the embassy. And two soldiers died. And one of them was the bodyguard of the president's son, and another one died, and one hostage died. But when that happened, the change came, because the violence was over, because everything was broken. They were broken. We are going now to see something about, wait a minute. In Peru, we have 3 big parts of Peru. We have the coast, we have the mountains, and we have the Amazon. Now you will see something about the Peruvian coast.
Lima, the city of experiences. Founded as the City of Kings right on the Peruvian coastline, Lima is alive and kicking.
Yo creo que se trata de un lugar privilegiado, donde nuestra cultura nace de toda una mezcla de otras culturas.
For 50 years now, Don Armando has been working at Lima's main square, in the heart of the city, where you can admire Lima's cathedral and its imposing architecture, the Archbishop's Palace, and the Government Palace, home to the daily changing of the guard, performed by the Húsares de Junín regiment. No matter which way you're heading, there's always something of interest, such as city squares and historical monuments, or churches like San Francisco and the famous catacombs. Convents, handicraft markets, customs, and museums, witnesses to a majestic past. "9 years behind the wheel" is enough reason to claim no one knows the streets of Old Lima better than Emilio.
Viajar por Lima es toda una experiencia. Cada lugar tiene su propio estilo. Los hay históricos, modernos, comerciales. Lima es una ciudad de contrastes.
Going from a tourist district to a commercial area can take just a few minutes. Lima is the right place for investments, as it has the infrastructure and provides the opportunities needed to enjoy every comfort. There's always something to do in Lima. The choices are many to meet every taste. And if entertainment is your thing, then visiting Miraflores is a must. Each place has its own charm, like historical Barranco, for example, or dynamic San Miguel. There are impressive water fountains not far from the historical center. Furthermore, Lima features modern shopping centers, boutiques, cafes, movie theaters, and its renowned cuisine.
Yo creo que uno de los principales encantos de Lima, definitivamente, es la comida.
Lima, known as the gastronomy capital of the Americas, boasts a diverse cuisine. And Pedro knows it well, as Lima's cuisine represents a melting pot of tastes and flavors, capable of pleasing the most dainty of palates, with its succulent dishes, which are making rounds throughout the world.
Si a las personas se les conquista por el estómago, entonces es fácil enamorarse de Lima.
Pisco is yet another icon, product of the best quality grapevines, and the chief ingredient in our famous Pisco Sour. Likewise, desserts such as mazamorra, arroz con leche, picarones, and suspiro de limeña all promise to leave you sighing once you taste them.
And this was just the Peruvian coast. Yeah, we still have to do the Andes, and we still have to do the Amazon. It's a huge country. Has a coastal line of more than 3,000 kilometers from north to south. So it's enormous. Yeah, Lima is a very dynamic city. It's an old city.
Where do you live?
I live in Lima, in San Isidro.
In Lima.
In Lima, in one of the districts. I live in the, they call it the business area, the business district of Lima. There's where I live. And that doesn't mean that,
Populated area.
what did you say?
A large populated area?
Not too much. Not too much. The large populated areas are outside the outer skirts of Lima. Districts, they have 1.3 million inhabitants or 500,000, 600,000. I think probably San Isidro would have 35, 40,000 maybe, 50.
What is the population?
In Peru, 33 million.
As much as we are.
Yes,
Oh my.
33 million. And it is increasing by the year, and very fast.
We have lots of room here.
There's still room in the Andes, a lot of room, but you've seen also the city of Arequipa. Did you see the white buildings? Maybe it went too fast, but there are white buildings. They're made of tough stone. You know lava, the lava stone? This brown or black. This is white because it's made out of the ashes of the lava, the ashes. And they have built a city with that. The Spaniards made a city with that, and it is beautiful. It's beautiful.
They must be into recycling.
It is really, really beautiful. Now they did that, the Spaniards did that a long time ago. Sir?
What's their culture there?
The culture. Yeah, we will come there in a moment, but there's culture. They have a lot of music. We have First Nation culture in the mountains, the Andes. It's different. They have food, different food. They have different music. We will hear that. The First Nations in the Amazon, they have other kinds of music, other kinds of food, for example. But what is well known all over Peru, as well in the mountains, as well in the Amazon, is pachamanca. They cook food under the ground. They dig a hole, they put a fire in it, they cut, and then they put all kinds of meat. They put stones first, then they put stones, then they put all kinds of meat, all kinds of vegetables, and they close it. And I've had it, and it is really, really nice. And they also make it in a pot, in a stove, but it's different. The ground pachamanca is from the ground, and the earth is really, really nice.
What kind of meat would they eat?
They ate alpaca meat, they ate pork meat, they ate cow meat.
Guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs. We ate guinea pigs. Yeah, people have them here, and also in my country. I'm actually Dutch, but we had them as pets, but they actually eat them there, and it's very healthy. They eat alligator, the Amazon. Yeah, they eat chicken. They eat and all kind of meat. Sometimes they eat monkey meat.
Lots of chicken.
Lots of chicken. Yeah, everywhere in Lima there are 2 or 3 chicken restaurants down the street. Everywhere. Yeah, they're everywhere.
You must have fantastic chicken farms.
They have huge, big chicken farms. When you go to the south, for example, is miles and miles and miles of road, and the only thing you see are chicken farms. Yeah, the only thing are chicken farms.
What does alligator taste like? Like what is it like?
Like chicken.
Like chicken?
Yeah, but it is not chicken, but it tastes something like it. Yeah,
Where do they get the monkey meat?
in the jungle, in the Amazon. Local people, they kill them and they eat them.
Do they export chicken and eggs, or do they just use them in the?
I think could be, I'm not sure, so I will not say it, but eggs, you can buy them by the enormous quantities, and chicken, enormous quantities. Yep.
How do you buy the eggs? By the dozens in a carton or by the pound?
You can buy them by the pound, you can buy them, egg by egg. Yeah, you can buy them by the pound. Yeah, when you want to buy when you want to buy 2 eggs, you can buy them actually, you can buy 2 eggs. Yeah, or even 1 egg, or you buy them in packages. Yeah, and even in crates of 30, you can buy them. And they cost, for example, a crate of 30 costs you maybe $4. So probably it's expensive. 30 is a good price.
What is our dollar like?
It's 256, if I'm not wrong. 256. We pay $2.56 for $1 Canadian dollar.
What's your money called?
Soles.
SOL.
ES. Soles. 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 Okay. Let's go to the Peruvian Andes.